Hey, everybody, do you want to experience the podcast in person, in real time? We have an opportunity if you are in the Portland metro area. We are connecting with the Just Create community, and we are going to go see Armageddon Time when it comes out on November 4th. We're going to go see the movie, and then we're going to go out to dinner and talk about it. It's going to be like the podcast. So if that's something that sounds fun for you, email me at christy@dodgemediaproductions.com. That email will be in the show notes, and you will get more information, and we'll find out when we're going and what time and what theater. So if you're interested, shoot me an email, and we'll get you looped into what we're going to do. Thanks.
You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody, to Dodge Movie Podcast. This is episode 88, and we are talking about the Rian Johnson film Knives Out, written and directed. It came out in 2019, and it's a Lionsgate film, and it has a huge cast, so buckle up. Daniel Craig. I'm going to do these in the order they are, but I wouldn't think that this is the order. Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Shannon, Don Johnson, Toni Collette, Lakeith Stanfield, Christopher Plummer, Catherine Langford, Jaden Martell, Ricky Lindholm. The synopsis for this film is: a detective investigates the death of the patriarch of an eccentric, combative family. There we go.
Who would have a house like that? Except, of course, a murder mystery author.
I know, wasn't that house? That house was its own character, wasn't it?
Kinda, yeah.
I have 5 taglines for you this week.
Lay 'em on me.
Okay. Everyone has a motive. No one has a clue.
Ooh, I like that.
That one's in the leader. That's the leader in the clubhouse.
Strong entry.
Okay. Hell, any of them could have done it. Not as strong.
Not strong at all.
Okay. Nothing brings a family together like murder.
Yeah.
It's second, though.
Yeah. It's second.
The first one, definitely.
The first one's still strong.
Okay. This one's more marketing. A Rian Johnson whodunit.
Oh,
that seems lazy. I mean,
somebody phoned that in.
The PA did that one. Okay. Comes a whodunit like no one's ever done it.
Oh, no.
Blech.
Yeah, that's the executive, the studio executive.
Yes, somebody got a visit from the Good Idea Fairy, as you say.
First one's awesome.
The first one is it, right? Yeah. Everyone has a motive. Nobody has a clue.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So I did a little deep dive like I do, or try to do with all the films as time allows in my schedule, to watch some behind the scenes, some interviews. And I recognized Rian Johnson's name, but I didn't really know other films that he had done. But it was kind of cool. He's a huge Agatha Christie fan, and he also was a Hitchcock fan. So I thought that was kind of funny because we did Murder on the Orient Express and then North by Northwest last week. And he said that he liked how Hitchcock believed in suspense, not surprise. And so he thought that a film, much like Agatha Christie, where it's just storytelling and then at the end you get your big reveal, he wanted to create, like we noticed in about 40 minutes, we know who killed who, but now you spend the rest of the film as it unravels. And he said, I want it to be a roller coaster, not a crossword puzzle.
Yeah, I think we actually know, I think we see the death even earlier than that, very quickly, probably in Act 1. And it's interesting that he said Agatha Christie and not Sir Arthur Conan Doyle because, and again, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the film, then, well.
Yeah, this is a spoiler-filled episode.
You've been warned. This is the wrong podcast. Yep. But he notices a tiny speck of blood on her shoe. That's a very Holmesian observation.
Now, I thought that was just supposed to be for the audience, but he noticed it?
At the very end.
Daniel Craig's character?
Yes, Benoit Blanc.
Benoit Blanc.
At the very end of the film, or close to the end of the film.
Oh,
her character Marta says, "How did you know?"
Oh, okay.
And he points to her little white shoe.
Yeah.
Which
we saw it earlier, but you're saying he is admitting at the end that he saw it at the beginning.
So he knew she was involved. What's, very Holmesian about that is that it could be from anything. Even if a person could have noticed that small speck of blood on someone else's shoe, he never, did any sort of DNA testing.
Right. It could have been, she could have gotten a paper cut.
And I'll allow this because it works for the film, but did she have no other shoes?
Right.
That she could, so that to me was more Holmes than Christie. That, I noticed that detail.
Yeah.
I go into Foghorn Leghorn too, but some people apparently were critical of Daniel Craig's accent.
Yeah.
He's such a character. Who cares what it's supposed to be? It's just, it is. It's that character's accent. I don't have a problem with it.
And he and Ryan went over Daniel Craig, being Southern and using that Southern accent.
Okay, so calling back to our friend Dustin's film, where my question to him was about the Irish accent not sounding terribly Irish, and then he said no, they worked with a vocal coach to make it sound like somebody who had immigrated, and so their accent was fading.
Right.
We don't know the backstory on that Benoit Blanc character.
Right.
Who knows why he would have an accent that doesn't sound perfectly Nolans or perfectly Alabama. I don't have a problem with it. People who do, I think, are being grumpy.
Yes, I agree. So this film was a huge hit. I mean, spoiler to by the numbers, but I haven't heard a lot of people who, when you bring this up, like when I told people that we were talking about this film, they were excited. So the cinematography of this film is really cool, and I have a great story for you.
Okay, lay it on me.
Okay, I was listening to Ryan, and he worked with a cinematographer that he has worked with since high school.
Wow, he had good, talented friends in high school.
Yes, and you will understand why he stuck with this guy. So one of the things that Mike does is he will look for the lighting in characters' pupils.
Mm-hmm. Like a normal person?
No, I don't think. Listeners, write in and tell me if that's normal.
This Mike guy and I are going to be good friends, I think.
Okay, so a lot of the characters in this film wore glasses. And so glasses are even more telling.
Oh, they're horrible.
Than pupils.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tons of reflection.
And so obviously this cinematographer is annoyed with all of the light panels that can be seen.
Right. Like when I pause the film and say, oh, look, they had two Kinos, because you can see it right there.
Right. So what he did is he built, I'm looking for the picture to show Mike, and I will put this in the show notes.
I'm so excited.
He built panels that went in front of the lights. I don't know how this didn't cast a shadow.
No, it wouldn't cast a shadow. It would affect the light, but that's basically like an octobox or a grid.
Yeah.
Oh,
except for
awesome.
He did it to mimic the windows that would have been in that house. It's just black tape on, a white panel. So that when he's shooting Jamie Lee Curtis and she's wearing glasses, you see the reflection of the window, which is actually the light.
I may have a new favorite cinematographer. This guy's awesome. And that photo that you found, I could stare at that for 10 minutes. Look at all that production porn there is there.
Okay, I want you to appreciate how much I love you and knew you would love this. When he referenced it, I went back in his Twitter to November of 2019.
Oh, thank you for researching that, producer.
To find that picture for you.
Oh, that is so awesome.
So that will be on our website, our newly refurbished, well, just the page, not the whole website, but I've been working hard on the podcast section of our website so you guys can have all these tidbits that I find.
Not kidding. I'm going to go look up his name as soon as we're done recording and commit it to memory. And if I can find contact info for this homie, I'm going to friend him on Insta or something. This is so awesome.
So the one, I don't know, this might be more editing than cinematography, but when Walt, played by Michael Shannon, is walking back and forth and he's kind of cornering Marta, I kept waiting for some significance other than just building tension, but they kept cutting back to the tip of his cane on the carpet, and then they would cut back to him and her face, and then they would go back to, do you remember this scene?
I don't remember the shot of the cane tip.
They did it like 4 or 5 times. I mean,
I trust you. I asked you this while we were while watching the film, paused actually to ask this and never got the answer. Why is Michael Shannon's left foot in the boot, the Velcro?
We never really
plastic
find
thing?
out.
We don't. Fascinating.
I know.
So, but that speaks to interesting that you had said it was written by Rian Johnson.
Yes.
And I don't believe it was based on a book. It was original content.
I believe it's original from him, yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because as we mentioned in Mr. Holmes, which was based on a book, I think the time scale for novels and screenplays is different. So if you're going to have something that's intricately plotted, it's much harder, I think, to do it in the time frame as well as in the like a number of words that you have in a screenplay. So massive credit to him if he wrote this completely by himself. Wow, that's really...
He did. He started in January of 2019, and the first draft was turned in June of that same year. Then they knew they wanted Daniel Craig, and he happened to... They must have had some tweaks, because then in September, they found out that he was going to have 3 months of a break. He was going to do probably the most recent Bond, the Bond that got held up through all the pandemic. And so he was going to have a 3-month break at the end of 2019. So they had 6 weeks of pre-production, and then they were going to film with Daniel Craig. And once they got Daniel Craig, then they pretty much got everybody else they wanted, because everybody wanted to work with Daniel. And then once you get like, oh, we have Michael Shannon. Oh, now everybody wants, and we have Jamie Lee Curtis. We have Toni Collette. Like, then everybody.
Plummer.
Right.
Now, you know this. Sadly, Mr. Plummer is no longer with us. But if I ever did get to work with him, there would be an incessant number of Sound of Music callbacks.
Which he would hate.
He probably would not appreciate them.
I thought you were the one that told me he was ashamed or embarrassed.
Well, he was upset. I had read that he was not very happy about it. And then subsequently I read that he'd kind of turned the corner a bit. So, but I could see that how if you weren't a musical theater actor and that's kind of what you're known for, you're like, look, I do all this other stuff and this is what I'm known for. So, but I thought he did a fantastic job in this film.
Yeah.
I particularly loved when there's a scene where he's like making fun of Marta's reticence. Oh no, I'm 85. I'm so frail.
Right.
He was actually like 90 when he was acting, 85. Right. When do you see a 90-year-old actor play young? Right? You hardly ever see that. So good job, buddy.
Right. I like how, right away we're getting the interviews. And so we're starting to learn the characters, the intricacies, the family members, how they feel about one another. Jamie Lee Curtis is proud that she has built her industry kind of all on her. I mean, but with daddy's money. Then Michael Shannon is proud. But then as she says, what? My dad hands him a book and he publishes it.
So this is partly writing and partly editing.
Yeah.
When they're first interviewing everyone, the character played by Lakeith is leading the interview, but we do see Benoit Blanc in the back, right?
Yeah.
But they use the cutting from the family member back to the detectives to switch family members.
Yes, right? I like that
and so
too.
That was startling. But then speaking of that, there was this great part where Jamie Lee Curtis gets really irate as her character, right? Whichever Thrombey it was. And she says, you think you're going to trick me into divulging like family secrets? And they cut to the detectives and then they cut back to Don Johnson as that idiot and he just spills the beans. And to me, that I didn't remember that from the first viewing. It was like, that's a funny gag with the edit.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I noticed they did that a couple times. They did that one other time because they would cut to and it was Jamie Lee. Her character's name was Linda Drysdale.
Linda, that's right. Linda, and her husband was Richard
Drysdale. And then Chris Evans was Ransom Drysdale.
Yeah, although he made everyone call him Hugh. So I have to say, they never paid off that joke. And I think it was an allusion to something that's very popular when I was younger with idiots like my dumb buddies. But there was actually a guy at college whose name was Bruce Jorgen, but everyone called him Hugh Jorgen. So I thought that's what he was doing when they said he made the help call him Hugh. I was thinking, oh, he was that kind of amateurish, immature young rich kid who thought it was funny.
A dick joke is funny.
Yeah.
As the interviews unfold, the audience becomes aware aware of some of the suspects. And we still, even at an hour and 30 minutes in, we don't know who has hired LeBlanc.
Oh, like an Agatha Christie story, it all reveals.
Yeah, at the end.
At the end, really.
And Ryan said that. He said that, yes, as a nod to the Agatha Christie, that you have, what was his first name? Blanc.
Benoit Blanc.
Benoit Blanc.
So I made a note here, which I didn't catch the first time I watched this film. So credit to Ryan Johnson that it's rewatchable. A lot of times suspense films aren't rewatchable because you know who did it. Right. But they established that Harlan Thrombey, played by Christopher Plummer, he's a mystery writer. He likes to play games with everyone. And basically, he's playing a game from beyond the grave. He's playing a game with Benoit Blanc. He has set up this cover-up of what happened, and he has the game that's going on. So I thought that was really well done, that there were multiple games being played throughout the plot. And to weave those intercut, again, credit to Johnson. What a fantastic job of writing.
Absolutely. I just looked up what other films he was known for. Looper. Did you watch that? Mm-hmm. Let's see. Star Wars, I guess.
He did the Star Wars. Yeah.
And Brick. I've never heard of that. From 2005, Brick. He did 3 episodes of Breaking Bad. I'm not seeing a ton that I recognize.
Yeah.
He looks almost like a overnight wonder kind of, because let's see, he did a video short in 1990, probably with that same cinematographer. He did a bunch of shorts. Basically, his first Looper is his first in 2012.
I want to see Bruce Willis and Gordon Levitt.
So, and then that's pretty amazing. Then 7 years later, he gets Knives Out.
Right. Yeah. Well done, though. Got to give the guy credit.
Yeah, because this is a great movie. And I was going to save it for the end, but I'm super excited to see the next one called Glass Onion. It comes out in theaters November 23rd, so in a little over a month. And then it'll be on Netflix December 23rd. So Merry Christmas to everybody.
Well, that's what we can do on Christmas Day. Instead of going to the theater, we can watch
I don't know if I can. I mean, we have that Regal Unlimited. I want to go see Glass Onion in theaters.
I love the way you think. That's awesome. I'm in.
We see it perfect. Mike loves to say if there's a gun in the first act, it'll be used in the third act. And
I think that was technically Chekhov who brought that up originally.
Okay. Mike repeats Chekhov.
I do.
And I wrote in my notes, if there's a recorder, somebody used the recorder app on their phone in the first act, then there will be a recorded confession in the third act.
Yeah, very well. Yes. I think they twice show us the phone early in the film to set that up. And credit again to the writing and editing is that we then don't see it again until it's actually necessary.
And then speaking of that, and my other favorite book ended, and this is quite literally a bookend because it's almost the first thing we see is this coffee mug that says, my house, my rules, my coffee.
Right.
And then at the very end, Marta is holding it. And I believe that we see her come out on the balcony. People who are paying attention can see she has that mug. Cut to the people, the family members down below. They look up above. Then it's a close up more of her. And then an extreme close up of that coffee mug, showing that now it's her house, her rules, her coffee. And that coffee cup got so much popularity that you can buy it now.
Nice merchandising.
Yeah.
I think you probably could already buy a stage knife where the blade goes into the handle, but they could have also sold
that would be another good one. Yeah. So we just noted that unlike a traditional mystery, how like 40 minutes in is when we found out what had happened. And then about an hour, we see that he left all his assets to Marta. And so now what are the kids going to do? So then we still had that's only halfway through the movie. We still had another hour to kind of let the rest of the story unfold.
Yeah. And part of that to me was, again, with the house, that was a key part, kind of like you said, its own character, that they were going through trying to explain these various and sundry things. And good credit to the filmmakers, writers, actors, editors, that, again, even though I knew what happened, I still had that tension of, I kind of didn't want Benoit to figure it out.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Even though, as you've established, I'm not the biggest fan of Ana de Armas's work as an actor. So it's not necessarily that I was into the Marta character. I think it was Christopher Plummer's, because it was his wish was, to kind of, so that nobody would unnecessarily take the fall. So that whole time I'm like, I hope he doesn't find out, because then she'll get in trouble. Even though I knew how the movie ended, it was still, I think, good filmmaking, because they had me. They got me in emotionally.
Yeah. It's so funny because you talk about how you don't have a good memory. This was like watching the movie for the first time. I totally forgot a lot of things. And so I was like, wait, who did it? Who hired Benoit? Like, what happened?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah. You can tell me later.
Okay.
But you were talking about the house being a character, and like, I don't know if it's because it is fall here in Oregon and the leaves are changing. I loved the scenery outside. I loved that it was obviously like a crisp fall day. Dogs were running around outside. Like you said, when you said the house was a character, I think of like the lattice that as she's climbing up, she breaks, and the interiors. I mean, and that knife sculpture, I don't know what you would call it. Artwork? Like, what? I always thought it was part of the chairs that they were sitting in, but then in the second watch, it was like it was just in the background.
Yeah, I called it in my notes a sculpture. It seems fairly odd. And even if I hadn't already seen the film, my first thought was not having that many weapons close to hand with these people. Right? It seems it'd be like just leaving loaded guns laying around that house. You don't want that. Oh, but that's a good question. Maybe the only ones that came off were the prop knives. He thought ahead.
So Ryan Johnson said that he did, one of the knives had this beautiful handle, intricate handle, and he took it.
So I have watched every episode of Forged in Fire, which means I'm not a knife expert, but I can play one on TV now.
Okay.
And looking at all those, that looks like the wall on Forged in Fire, all the different knives that they could have. So my question is, who made them?
Yeah.
And I do wonder if it's one of the judges from Forged in Fire, because I know several of them have worked for the movies, because there aren't many people who make blades anymore. There aren't that many.
I hate to burst your bubble. They were all probably painted pieces of wood.
Oh my gosh, you're probably right.
The props department just... I'm sorry.
Yeah, somewhere Jane Nielsen turned over in his bed like, no!
If I find out, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Alrighty. Did we have any head trauma in this film?
We didn't have head trauma in the film, but in a bit of irony, Mr. Plummer died from hitting his head in a fall. So that's the cause of death of Christopher Plummer.
Of Christopher Plummer.
As a person. He fell and hit his head.
It just got dark.
It did.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was just old age.
Well, perhaps, but the proximate cause was a bump to the head.
Oh, rest in peace.
At this point, I like to remind people, have a wobble board workout.
And if you need any wobble board advice,
I'm your man.
You can ask my co-host.
Yeah. I'm very curious if our cinematographer Mike has a wobble board workout. I need to get a hold of him, and maybe I'll send him one with a bow on.
There you go. That can be your gift of appreciation for his.
So I did have a question about sets.
Yeah.
We talked about the house, but then Marta lives somewhere. It looks like it's maybe an apartment.
I would say so, or like a duplex.
Right?
Yeah.
So later in the film, Michael Shannon's character Walt, is that his name, Walt?
It was Walt.
He ambushes her in a back hallway. So she was coming out with the reporters were on the front stoop, and she wanted to escape from the press, so she went in the back door, and he's in the hallway there, right?
Yeah.
It had the strangest lights ever.
Oh, interesting.
So they were about face height on the wall. Each one was maybe 18 inches long by maybe 4 inches tall, and there was just a bunch of them horizontal line along the wall. This immediately bumped me.
They weren't leading lines?
Well, they served as that, but it didn't make any sense architecturally. First
you would
of all,
not have lights that low, is what you're saying.
Yeah, not on the wall. You put them in the ceiling. They wouldn't be that many that close together. Like, to me, it would obviously look like the hallway's too dark. We have to light it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to say.
I was like, really, guys? I don't know. It just...
It bumped you.
It took me out of the film.
Okay. Well, I will... If if I have time, look and see if I can find a behind the scenes.
Yeah. So now I'm thinking
set production.
Somebody in like property design or something,
There's a reason.
They're at home listening to this podcast, shouting and throwing their
I told them they wouldn't look practical.
My house, my rules, my coffee mug across the room.
Yeah.
I told you no one would believe this.
Yeah.
And I'm the one that supports their theory because it did bump me. Anywho, I think as a general rule, the house was awesome.
Oh, so cool. So cool. All right. I don't think we had a love connection.
No.
There was no love interest.
Not really.
Really?
No. And in fact,
no
I think
smooch.
the married people didn't like each other much.
No, not really. Yeah, I'm trying.
Do we have a photo of Don Johnson's character kissing his unnamed hussy?
But you know what? I even got confused because I thought that was Marta.
Right. Yeah.
Are we supposed to think it's Marta?
Perhaps the actress who's credited has a name that would seem to be Ecuadorian, Uruguayan, Peruvian, whatever they kept calling her. Poor old Marta.
Right. That was kind of a funny gag.
It was a funny, subtle gag. Yeah.
Did you get that the son of Michael Shannon and Ricky Lindholm, do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, the son, right?
Thrombey. His name was
Marcus?
Anyway, did you get that he was a Nazi?
No, I got that the character played by Catherine Langford, who I only know from Love, Simon, I think. She looked familiar.
She was in 13 Reasons.
Okay. She is established to be a far left extremist social justice warrior, and she calls him a Nazi.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the only true Nazism. We see that Ricky Lindholm's character is very conservative, kind of waspy, to use the term. So I just interpreted that to be the perspective of Toni Collette's character and Catherine Langford's character called him a Nazi relative to their extremist left policies.
Well, because I saw an interview with a bunch of the actors, and the kid, it was cute. He goes, "Hey, if I get to play with Christopher Plummer, I'll be a Nazi." And then Jamie Lee Curtis broke in and said, "Nazis are made, not born, and so you have to blame the parents."
Well, again, great callback, because what is a plot point in The Sound of Music but Nazis?
Right.
So he could play Rolf.
Right. There you go. All right. Let's see. There was a little driving. Do you have a
There was some driving. I do have some driving review. First note is the 2007 Hyundai Accent is actually a reasonable car for Marta to drive. It was the budget Hyundai at the time and was very popular for low cost. I like the touch that it has damage on the driver's side door, right? There's a scene where Ransom and Marta are in that car looking at the burnt down wreckage of the testing lab, and she throws a U-turn. And my question is, for a car that small, how is the turning radius that big? It was nuts. But there was a part where I originally was going to make note of this as being not accurate, and then I did some research. She's trying to flee from the police, and he says, like, go faster. She said, I'm going as fast as I can, and it shows the speedometer at like 60. The Accent in 2007, that had a 96 horsepower engine, so pretty realistic. She can't go that fast, and she certainly can't accelerate.
I liked this. You get an overhead, like an overhead shot, like a crane shot or a drone shot of her car, and the cops were like slowly gaining on her.
Right.
She was
yeah. So I'd have to look it up, but the 1981 Honda Accord hatchback that I drove in high school maybe didn't even have 96 horsepower. So, and I did think the casting worked well. There's a 2019 Porsche Cayenne that is driven by Jamie Lee Curtis's character and Don Johnson's character, Linda and Richard, which I think establishes that they have money and they're kind of pretentious. And then that BMW that Ransom drives, what a perfect piece of accoutrement for a trust fund kid, right?
Right, absolutely.
So I really did enjoy that. And I have to say credit to the writing, because at one point he has to turn around and he basically just drives up on a slope, and a rich kid would take that car off-roading.
Right. He wouldn't have any regard.
No one else would.
Right. Exactly. Thank you for that. All right. So we go to the numbers.
Let's go to the numbers.
Okay. So in light of looking at his IMDb, I'm surprised that Lionsgate gave him $40 million million. Now, maybe Looper was a huge success and he had proved himself.
I think, I don't know the box office, but I seem to recall it was critically acclaimed.
Right. And maybe, I guess Star Wars had to be in there. So maybe he proved himself.
Was Star Wars before Knives Out, right?
Yeah, 2017. So he had proven himself, right?
That's true. Oh, yeah, Star Wars. Well, he probably got back in, so he's probably rolling in the money himself.
Right. So they gave him $40 million, and he multiplied it by almost 8 times that.
Oh, yeah.
So they were okay.
That's why he got a
That's
sequel.
why he got Glass Onion.
Yeah. Do it again, Ryan.
So domestically, it brought in $165 million. Worldwide, it brought in almost $313 million.
Yeah, it's a really good film.
Good flick.
Yeah.
It got a 7.9 out of 10 on IMDb.
That's a little low,
but IMDb runs low. So for IMDb, that's pretty good. Critics loved it on Rotten Tomatoes, gave it a 97%, and audiences followed suit. A little bit lower than that, though, at 92%. This one is also an investment, much like North by Northwest. It is 2 hours and 10 minutes, but I would say it holds up pretty good. It doesn't really drag.
I don't feel like it drags at all.
So it's PG-13. The whole family can watch it. In fact, Ryan adjusted. There's a scene where Chris Evans was supposed to say F you to a bunch of the family members. It would have been a lot of Fs.
But the full word, not just the letter.
Yes. And so there's some people that listen to this podcast that don't like that word. So I was trying to be.
Right. And I was being clear.
Okay. Chris Evans would have said the whole word.
The whole word multiple times.
Yes. And so they changed it so that you can sit around the couch and have some popcorn and enjoy this one with your family. This comedy crime drama. It won 52 awards. There were so many I didn't even bother listing them. And it got 114 nominations. So this one was a hit.
It's a hit.
It's a hit. So that's why we picked it for mystery, even though it's not really an indie film.
Although with his lack of short amount of credits, maybe it gets a little indie cred because he doesn't have a long and established Hollywood backstory, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like a long history with the studio. So he probably still has a little bit of indie vibe.
Right. And I have to say, for not being familiar with his work, in the few interviews, he seemed very down to earth. In this one, he was wearing this jacket that it looked like he had since he was in like high school.
Since he met the cinematographer.
Yeah, it was just, so he seems like a really down-to-earth kind of guy. So this film was filmed largely in Massachusetts. So I will say that Knives Out was largely filmed in Massachusetts.
Not a lot of Boston accents there, but okay.
But that house was beautiful. So good job to the location scouts on this one. Alrighty, guys. Next week, we're going to talk about The Usual Suspects. We're going to revisit that one, see what we think now. We both saw it a long time ago. So we're going to give it another watch, and that will wrap up Mystery Month, and then we will head into Bromance Month, the month of November.
Oh, nice.
For, what is it? Movember.
Yeah.
That's why we picked it. We're going to do that, and then, like I said, we are putting the final touches on next year. We have a lot of great plans for you all, some ways to highlight some of our other abroad listeners and to highlight the different countries that listen to the podcast, which is growing every day, and we thank you very, very much. So with that, never forget,
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.